This week on the OneCast, we're joined by Seth Mycko with NCWRC. We're going to talk fisheries biology and our lakes here in North Carolina.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad.
Get on that. Huh?
It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's going to be a bad day.
What is going on, OneCast fans? Welcome back to the OneCast, episode 64. We're super excited to have fisheries biologist for District 5 with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. Jeez. I'll get it right one of these times. Join us today. But before we do that, we have some stuff we got to talk about. Of course, we got to start with OneCast Fishing. Make sure you head to OneCastFishing.com. Use the code TheOneCast, all one word, at checkout to save some cash on the snagless jigs, long neck hooks, weedless nets, and all the soft plastics. Supporter of the show, make sure you check them out. Also, Carolina Waters, CarolinaWatersNC.com. Use the code TheOneCast, all one word again. You'll save 20% off your order. All the UPF gear's there. Fishing season's coming. The sun's starting to shine. It's time to get that gear. Get ready to protect yourself from the sun. So get some UPF stuff. Some of their casual wear. It's super comfortable. And then, of course, hats. And they've got some new stuff coming, so it'll be coming soon. Trey showing off.
Well,
Ben's got a pair on his head.
You talked about sunshine.
Yeah. So sunshine.
Protect your eyes, protect your skin. Make sure you combat that melanoma that, the UV rays have the potential of getting you. So there's no better way to do that than getting your hands on some Hobie eyewear that's going to protect you. And it's also going to help you catch more fish, man. So there's a link that we have in the description. You use that link. That's going to save you 15% on any of your Hobie orders. And I'm telling you right now, I can't keep giving the float series enough credit. Like, we have made several videos, and if you guys haven't checked those out, go check those out. We literally throw these glasses right in the water and they come up and they float and you're good to go. I can't tell you how many pairs of glasses I've lost in the lake. And you know what? Fishery biologists are probably not very happy about that. So let's help with conservation efforts and get your hands on some Hobie eyewear.
And they don't look like usual float frames that are big and giant obnoxious. They look like any other pair of sunglasses you would wear from any other manufacturers. They're a normal looking frame. The technology they have that allows it to float lets it stay that nice normal size. It doesn't look all ridiculous. You don't have to wear those big honking glasses keepers anymore with corks and floats on them. So make sure you check them out. Again, the link is in the bio, or the link is below in the description. If you follow us on social, those videos are there, and we have the link there as well. Price is already great. That's already super affordable. But being able to get that extra 15% off is definitely a nice thing. Yeah, price is already great. What prices aren't great on is land and properties right now. However, to help with conservation efforts, you can hit up our buddy Eric Schwinn at mossyoakproperties.com. He will help you find your piece of paradise and maybe conserve some of that land that we're tired of seeing people build residential developments on, which really hurts the watershed. We talked about that long time ago with Corey Oakley. So if you guys are interested in owning your little piece of paradise, hit up Eric Schwinn at 936-494-9686, or you can shoot him an email at eschwind@mossyoakproperties.com. That's all in the description below, too. We're going to get rolling with Seth here in a second, but before we do, if you watched our Friday Live, we talked about the Red Crest drama. We're not going to go into it. But congratulations to Dustin Connell. Second win on the BPT of the year. Second Red Crest win.
Red Crest winner.
And he absolutely mashed it on this one. I mean, it wasn't even close. He had, 28-pound win, something like that.
The margin was huge.
Yeah. It wasn't even close. So
the other people were competing against themselves.
He
was on a different planet. He was just
the guy. He's a hometown favorite. We saw that last year with the elites with Will Davis Jr. winning on Lay Lake. That's his home lake. And then this year, Dustin Connell got to take home the second Red Crest trophy in a row on one of his home lakes, part of the Coosa River system. So it was a no-brainer. He was going to win. I mean, you didn't really have to watch live if you're not into watching fishing. I don't really like watching it, but I had to tune in just for a second to see what the margin was. And I was like, yep, he's got it in the bag. No big deal. You know what I mean? So huge congratulations to him. And man, huge congratulations to fish conservation with our buddy here, Seth Mycko. What was that? What happened?
Something exploded.
Oh man, gunshots in the room. So yeah, man, without further ado, Seth, we want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. And we want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day driving here. And thankfully you got to use the business vehicle. So that's a cool deal, right? Because this is official business.
That's right. Yeah. So thanks for having me. My name's Seth. I'm based out of Mebane, North Carolina. and I'm in charge of District 5, which is basically everything from Randolph County over to Lee and all the way up to Virginia. So that stretch of the north central Piedmont. Biggest reservoirs in there are Mayo, Mycko, and Jordan will be some of our biggest, with Randleman thrown in there too.
Okay.
So kind of before we get before we dive into like all the fisheries and the districts and all the conservation efforts and stuff, like what's the track, just for our younger listeners that maybe aspire to be fisheries biologists and stuff like that? And fisheries biologist 2, right, is the official title?
Yeah.
All right. So
one level up from the bottom.
One level up. Hey man, we're always striving for the next level. So how does somebody like yourself, how do you get into that line of work, and what are the gates that you have to go through to get into that?
Yeah. So I grew up fishing ponds, hopping ponds in a john boat. And then got my license and carried a little plastic pedal boat around all the little lakes around back home. And then I went to Clemson. They had like a dual wildlife and fisheries program. So that was back when I thought I was going to be like a professional fisherman. And then like you share a ledge with Jordan Lee back in those years when he was still in college, and realized maybe I don't have the chops for the professional fishing route. So really dove into the biology side, especially the fisheries biology, and then got a job with SCDNR as a fisheries technician. They're right out of school. And I actually chased stripers around Thurman or Clarks Hill, depending on which side of the line you're from.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then I did that for about a year, and then went back to graduate school and studied smallmouth bass.
Oh, really?
In the Broad River just south of Gaffney, South Carolina.
Okay.
And I tracked those around that river for almost 2 years. And then I was fortunate enough to find an opening up here and landed right in District 5. Been here almost 7 years now since grad school. So,
man, there's probably no better fisherman out there than you, because you're a fish catcher. You get to catch them no matter. You don't even have to use a rod and reel. That's awesome, And we always talk about like learning fish behavior and like, but about the bait fish, the forage, all that stuff, how fish react. And so for us, I'm still trying to figure out the difference between a gizzard shad and a threadfin. For you, it's like, I know what they're saying.
We got that locked down.
Yeah, I know. And
we got her locked down now.
Thank you, Corey.
Yeah, thanks, Corey.
We got to give
He
Corey
squared us away.
Squared up.
Yeah, he got us squared up at Raleigh this year. So.
But I mean,
Corey knows more about papers now these days.
That's right.
Hey, that's what happened when you strive for level 3.
He's level 5 or 6.
He's moving on.
He's on that. Yeah. He's not part of the fisheries anymore. He's part of the paperwork.
Yeah.
So, but like that is interesting. Like in your field of work, is there a huge demand for it?
Yeah, there is. So the way we're set up, we have 9 districts statewide, and we have 2 biologists within each district. So there's still not a ton of jobs, especially in fisheries. In North Carolina, we don't have fisheries technicians or anything like that. But we have 2 biologists, a research coordinator in every region. So that's a regional position in charge of 3 districts. And then we have a regional supervisor.
Okay.
So there's that'd be 3 and 6 of those positions, and then there's 6 of us district level positions.
Okay.
In the region. So
You are spread thin.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
we are.
What do you guys what do you do like on a daily basis?
So like right now we're ramping up for our actual largemouth surveys and our broodfish collection. So we collect all the striped bass and white bass that we use to produce hybrids for stocking. So we'll be doing that next month and getting those fish for the hatcheries. And then in summertime, we're out actually handling more plants than we are fish, and we're out, putting native aquatic plants throughout the state now. We got close to 6 projects going where we're doing that all summer long from May until August, basically.
So a lot of time out on the water.
Oh yeah. It'll be 60-hour weeks in April, probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you need to get some of those Hobie sunglasses to protect you from the sun. Some of that Carolina Waters apparel.
For sure.
Yeah. So with a fish, I think there's probably a misconception about like fisheries biologists. It's not just, it's fisheries biologists. It's not fish biologists, right? So within fisheries biology, like what is all encompassing with that between aquatic vegetation, fish? You break it down for us.
Yeah. So that the vegetation is the habitat side of things, where we're trying to enhance habitat. And that's where you see our fish attractor buoys with the actual plastic fish attractors below them. So we actually try to enhance habitat as best we can. Granted, several lakes have regulations within that we have to follow based on who owns the reservoirs and rivers and things. And then on the fish side, we're just responsible for making sure the fish are there to be caught. We're not necessarily making them bigger per se. We'll do all we can, but actually the anglers will do more on the making fish bigger side of things. We just make sure they're there to be captured.
Well, how do they make fish bigger?
So in some lakes, we actually need more harvest of some of our fish, especially our small city lakes. They can really get stunted on just about every sport fish species, crappie and largemouth. They can really stun out pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
So we need some harvest there.
Yeah. So for everybody, like keeping 5 bass isn't necessarily going to destroy a fishery, right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
it's always funny when you see folks on the cesspool, as I like to call it, also known as Facebook. Somebody will post a picture of a stringer of bass. And I used to be one of those guys until I educated myself and realized how important it is. But you'll see everybody jumping there. Oh, you need to let them go. They were going to get big, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, in theory, but also it can be detrimental to a fisher if we don't, if we let everything go, which Ray Scott and Bass, and they did a great job conserving, but bass fishermen have beat it into our own head so much that you have to catch and release that. I think you can probably speak more than I can, but it seems like it is becoming a detriment in some bodies of water.
Yeah, especially the smaller reservoirs that don't really get fished a whole lot, especially the ones that don't get a lot of tournaments. We see a lot of overpopulation going on for a lot of species.
And you know that one of the things I do see on those posts a lot, there's usually a couple of comments. Hey, if it's a farm pond, sometimes you got to thin them out. Well, the same thing applies. It sounds like to any reservoir right here in North Carolina, at least in your district, it seems to be some of those smaller city ones.
Yeah, the smaller city lakes definitely bigger problem there than a lake like Jordan.
You're right. I never put that together until you just said that, because it does crack me up, because they will say that, like, oh, if it's a farm pond, you need to thin them out. Well, that doesn't only apply to farm ponds.
The only reason that's said is because they can't fish that farm pond, so it doesn't matter. I mean, and you know, and so is there a line in the, not a line in the sand, but is there, like, you know, when all the big girls are up there and they're spawning, you know, 7-8 pound, or, you know, or bigger or smaller, I mean, can it significantly hurt a population if everyone goes out there and catches them off the bed and keeps them, though?
Yeah, if you caught everyone, but I don't foresee that ever happening where every fish spawning would be caught.
Yeah.
And you know, your 8-pound female, that could be 300,000 eggs or more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of fry coming out of one female.
And what's the, just out of pure curiosity, what's the mortality rate of a 300,000 egg hatch?
I'd say it's like 40% of those won't make it to adulthood.
Okay.
That's
a lot of them will
make
it to that 3-inch range, you know.
Yeah.
Probably 60% of those will get to that size.
Yeah.
But if you got like blue catfish and things like that, then some of those fry will get consumed by
That's a
some of the
little
other
higher than I
predators.
expected.
That was
way higher than I expected.
I was expecting like 2%.
Yeah.
Well,
and, you know, cover's a big deal. So anywhere you get like water willow and things like that, that'll be good habitat for that fry to hide in.
Okay.
You'll get, you know, a bolstered.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, cover, because I know there's a lot of concern from anglers on Lake Jordan. There's not a ton of cover in that good water depth and things like that. And I know it's an Army Corps lake, and I think everybody on the conservation and fishing side would like to see the normal lake level be 3 foot higher, right?
Yeah.
Not just for fishing, obviously for fishing, but also that creates that habitat for those fry, because there isn't a lot of that water willow. There isn't grass. When it's at normal pool, it's so silted in now. Most of those bushes and that shallow water estuary areas are out of the water now. So what on a lake like Jordan, where you don't have that, is that where we see the lay down, where the fisheries going around and trying to make structure? That's the important thing with that.
Yeah.
Right?
So like at Harris, that's where we're planting water willow and things like that, and actually putting native aquatic vegetation in the reservoirs. And then where that's not necessarily a good strategy, because of, you know, especially Jordan can go up and down so much. We'll do more abiotic work where we just will fall a tree or throw in some plastic attractors and things like that.
That's awesome.
And also it's important, like Jordan's a major drinking water supply.
Yeah.
So they'll never be able to control the actual water level at Jordan, because there's so much output, you know, going to homes in Raleigh.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Me either.
You know, I knew like
I knew it was
Burlington and like McIntosh, Randleman, some of those like city lakes, obviously, but I had no idea. I just thought it was for flood control with the Cape
So,
Fear.
You know, when you go under 64 and you look to the right, there's all the buoys there that say like danger, keep out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the intake for I think it's the city of Cary has a water intake there for drinking water.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
the spot that everybody fishes with the jig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's probably a pipe down there or something they don't want anybody getting
I've
hung
seen
on. Or
I've seen it on site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they used to have like a floating dock out there too. I think they removed all that now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Huh.
So-
We are learning something today.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're learning
So
a lot.
In drought years, that's why you'll see Jordan go down and then just keep dropping because you know they're still supplying water to all those homes around Raleigh.
I got
Well, that makes sense because this past year was pretty bad drought. I mean, Jordan was at the point where almost every boat ramp was closed.
212, I think. Is what
Yeah, I think it
211.
got to 212 was the lowest, to somewhere around there. And obviously, we got a ton of rain, and it shot up to 7 feet over normal pool in like a month. But
Yeah.
and now it's back to normal again, where it might still be like half a foot high. I haven't looked today because I can't
Think
get out
so.
there
Yeah.
till I can't get out there till Monday. So I'm hoping we get that rain this weekend to push it up a little bit.
I hear you on that one.
So before we dive in, because I know we wanted to talk about a couple of specific lakes like Shearon Harris and stuff like that. But just like in general, so you have the aquatic side and you have the fish side, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the ongoing efforts that North Carolina has specifically in your district? And if you can name all the lakes in your district, I don't know if you did before, I may have missed it, but what are some of the ongoing aquatic efforts that NCWRC has going on in your district?
So I'm the habitat district right now. I have one of our oldest habitat projects for our native weeds is on Oak Hollow Reservoir in High Point.
Okay.
And we've been doing that for almost 13 years now.
Wow.
And we've been able to get almost like 4 acres of standing vegetation. That's any one of 7 species typically that we've got going out there.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
And I'm actually hearing that fishermen are even actually fishing that stuff now. So
Okay.
I'm glad to see that. And then we, of course, we're stocking F1s. We could get into that later if you
Yep.
guys want to.
Oh, absolutely.
And then outside of that, we're just doing our routine monitoring, make sure the fish are there, they're happy, they're healthy, and we're blessed, especially in D5 with just big old largemouth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Crappy.
we are.
Crappy, not so much, but we got the largemouth covered in D5.
Why do you think? Why is that? Why is the crappie so much? Because the lakes are so nutrient rich, and like Jordan, for instance, right? Why is there such a difference between the largemouth being those big old girls with those big shoulders, as we like to say,
Yep.
they have them here, big footballs, and the crappie not?
Yeah, crappie, they need a lot of harvest. And I think some of those city lakes, especially, they just still don't get enough harvest in the smaller systems. You probably cannot over harvest a crappie fishery.
Really?
Yeah.
While we're on crappie,
they're so good at reproducing, they'll do it and then your average size will go down when there's that many fish.
I know they'll overtake a pond and stuff quick, but why do we see like there's not a ton of regulation on crappie in the state of North Carolina? But then you look at Jordan and it has specific. Why is Jordan a little bit different? If you can go into that a little bit.
It's a bit of a higher harvest crappie fishery. We haven't done a krill survey there where we actually interview anglers in a while, but I'd guess it's in like the 50 to 60% harvest range on the crappie side.
Okay.
So it's a little higher harvest. So we're trying to just meter that harvest a little
gotcha.
bit there at Jordan, but it's probably one of the few lakes in the state that we actually need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they're actually keeping enough fish.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be hard to over harvest a crappie fishery.
Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, you don't see the crappie fishermen on Harris like you do on Jordan.
Yeah.
You don't really see them on falls like you do on Jordan. But
Yeah.
man, I've come through the S bends on Jordan in the river
You can't make it.
and like almost killed people.
Yeah.
Because you don't know they're there. You come around the bend, there's 300
Uh-huh.
crappie boats sitting in the middle of the river.
And
You're screaming at that's 65 mile an hour, and you got to just shut it down and pray you don't hit somebody.
you're screaming at them for crappie fishing, but they're actually doing more good than the bass.
No, yeah,
are. You know what I mean?
No, I don't care that they're crappie fishing, but it's
And
like
they're screaming at you saying, "Slow down."
I'm like, leave a lane, man. Come on.
No, that's interesting. Habitat is everything for a fish. Corey kind of dove into it before about watershed and stuff like that affecting the habitat.
Yeah.
So you got these ongoing efforts, in High Point and all over your district. What are some of the things that are creating like catastrophes from your potential that is in control of the anglers that we could do better?
Yeah, we need to not move those Alabama bass around. They're in Gaston now. They're definitely in Bugs Island, or at least the lower end of Bugs. So they just need to stay where they're at.
Tillery,
Don't be
right?
loading them in a bass boat and bringing them to a new lake that you think are going to make better. I grew up in that central part of the upstate of South Carolina. I watched these lakes fall one by one by one. Where, you know, it'll take 15 to 20 years for them to get to the Norman level of, you know, just full of those little rat spots, but it'll get there. Gaston will eventually go that way. I know right now
it's getting there.
There's probably some bigger spots being weighed in at Gaston right now.
There are.
That's gonna change over time. It's not gonna last forever.
And they're still getting some of the bigger largemouth too for now. And I know that's also something you have to be concerned about.
Yeah, Gaston's another positive in that we've done a lot of habitat work there, and hopefully those largemouth will have some of those backs of those coves, those weedy coves to get into.
I keep a mess of them every time I'm on Gaston and catch them, so I try.
Well, there's no limit on them, right?
No limit and no size, which, you know, that could help the people that are moving them, because they can go catch as many as they want and move them wherever they want to. But we just do not want anyone moving those Alabama bass around.
I know there's really no way to predict. You know, 10 to 15 years seems to be the cycle once they get in there. But on a lake like Jordan that is so nutrient rich, there's so much bait. Do you think that potentially that timeline would be accelerated and we could see that fishery fall a lot faster?
Yeah, it could. We're not sure what the turbidity tolerance of that species is. So it would kind of be, I hate to say it, but a good research endeavor for us to really see if the turbidity hinders them at all. But I hope I don't have to research that.
Yeah, I think that was something Corey mentioned. Like, he's like, every roadblock that we've come to that we thought this is going to stop them.
Exactly.
They just plow right through it. And for smallmouth, which are essentially extinct in our lakes now in North Carolina,
basically,
pure smallmouth,
slowly going
he's like, hopefully the rivers, like that's our last hope, is that the river smallmouth won't be overtaken, because we hope they can't survive in those conditions.
Yeah. They're not as good in turbid waters, but I still think they're going to survive no matter where you put them.
They're going to adapt.
So yeah, they're going to adapt. They're such an invasive species. They'll adapt and overcome just about anywhere you put them.
So you'll see a picture of the signs that are going up. You can actually hold that up if you want to the iPhone. Hopefully it'll show it.
So we don't have too many. So in District 5, they're going to say, do not stock Alabama bass. And then that's all the info on that. They're a dangerous invasive species that we do not want anywhere in North Carolina where they haven't already been introduced.
Yeah. And we're gonna post that picture up so everybody can see it.
I'm gonna put it on our socials too as a standalone post. We've been talking about Jordan. You know, a lot of you have shot me questions since I posted the potential one. Just educating people. Like, we don't know that one that I posted was, and I've told you that there's no way to tell from the picture we had. But again, Seth, you told me, I've been telling everybody, if you even think you catch one in a lake that doesn't have them, Jordan, Falls, Harris, what lakes in the rest of District 5 don't have them yet?
Mayo, Mycko. Yeah, they're not far from bugs. So.
Mycko doesn't have any spots? Not that I'm aware of. Okay, I thought they did. Somebody told me they did, but I don't know.
Not that I'm aware of.
I probably should have taken a picture of that.
And then you know, you got Ballew's Creek they've had them for a while. All those Greensboro City lakes.
Gotcha. So yeah, if you're fishing any of those and you even think you've caught one, regardless of the size, do not release that fish. Take a picture of the tongue patch, the mouth, right? Yeah. And the fish from the side. We've put his business phone out there where you can send a picture and reach out to him and keep that fish. Don't worry if it's under 14. If you already have two, it doesn't matter. Corey has as well, but Seth as well has made it clear that they've spoke with the game commission. They let them, the officers, to let them know, hey, we do not want these things in here. If people are suspecting that that's what it is, then we want them to keep them. Don't abuse that. Don't use that as an excuse to keep a bunch of unders because you want to eat them.
Yeah.
If you truly believe you caught a spotted bass, do not release that fish. Take it home, eat it, give it to your neighbor, let them eat it. If you don't want to eat it, do something, but don't put it back in there.
And let me know where.
And let Seth know what lake it was caught, and that way they can.
And where it was caught on the lake, right? That's important too.
Yeah, it could be. You know, if we caught it really early, maybe we could go in with an electric fishing boat and try to shock as many out as we could.
Yeah.
But usually by the time we find out they're in a lake, it's over.
Especially if you got like a 2-pound spot or bigger, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, they grow at rapid rates too. And they reproduce at rapid rates. They're like crappie on steroids. And
they're like rabbits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't transport fish. You heard it.
Unless it's to the fryer.
Yeah. Unless
you want to keep them out.
You're going to knock the sides off and throw them in grandma's grease. Go for it.
Yeah, good fertilizer. Outside of not transporting fish, specifically the Alabama spotted bass or any species, don't transport any species.
Yeah.
Wipe your boat down after you get done on the lake and drain it out and stuff. Is there anything else that anglers are doing or that can be done to prevent habitat destruction?
Yeah, be on the lookout for it's a cyanobacteria called Lingbia. Tuckertown has a bunch of it, and Gaston has a bunch of it. It's kind of like that black snot grass.
Yes.
Yeah, and
I've been finding some in Jordan too.
Like if it's on your boat trailer, like actually physically remove it. It's not going to dry out and die real easily. So if you're going from lake to lake to lake and you have that on your boat trailer, you want to actually physically clean that off real good before you go to a different lake.
So you guys have seen the movie The Grudge?
Yeah.
You seen that scary movie?
Yeah.
I call it the grudge hair, right? That black snot grass that gets on your boat and stuff.
Yeah.
And in fact, a buddy of mine blew his engine up because it got caught up in his intake on Tuckerton Reservoir.
Okay.
I put my boat in there one time and I'll never go there again because I couldn't get the grudge off my boat. You know what I mean? So
it is a native natural species. Like it's always been in the rivers of the state, but we just don't want it being artificially spread.
How do you are there attempts to control it? Because the Harris used to have a bunch in Tornado Alley.
Yeah. So NC State's doing a lot of work on Lingbia at Gaston right now, and they're learning that they can somewhat control it, but it's a very expensive endeavor.
Yeah,
So-
everything takes money.
Do the grass carp have any control with that?
No, they don't, because it's a bacteria. It's not
Okay.
even a plant. So
Okay,
the grass
okay.
carp won't touch it. They'll swim through it, but they
Interesting.
won't eat it. Yeah, it's a cyanobacteria.
Because we saw a lot of NC State on
Mhm.
Bugs Island. There was all over the place. They were doing grass carp studies on bugs.
Oh, were
So, yeah, we
Was this
saw
recent?
their fence. I don't know how old the
Oh,
fences
okay.
were, but
yeah, probably
their
pretty
fences
old.
and their signs were there.
Real.
Okay.
That just sparked me to think if that was something they were attempting.
I
to
thought
see,
we should flip in there because it looked like I ain't been touched in 400 years.
that one was pretty bad.
Yeah.
It was all caved in on one side. I was like, we should steal.
Well,
the
that's
sun.
that's another good point to bring up, right? Like those fish, those habitats are out there for a reason. So don't mess with them, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you guys get people typically messing with the fences and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think someone got hung up inside one and actually like punched his boat in our fence. We had to fix
Yeah.
that. But all in all, not too bad.
Yeah.
Oh.
And, all these things are put in place for us. They're not for any selfish reason other than to enhance the experience on the water, to enjoy those big shouldered bucket mouth bass that
That's
we all
right.
like to catch, and not those dinks that you need to knock the sides off. So,
I've got one random question here.
Okay.
Because we're talking about not destroying things. Years ago in Jordan, they used to have. Do you remember these? They had it was up like in the Haw River for sure, like Stinky Creek area. They would have. I think they were water circulators.
Oh,
There
the
were-
solar bee.
The solar bee. Yeah. What was the deal with that? I don't think I ever. Really,
Yeah. So Jordan has an algae problem when the
Yeah.
water doesn't move in the summer, and they thought that those were going to stir up the water and help control the algae. But I think they were a total flop.
how much money did we waste? No, I'm just kidding. Don't answer that
Yeah.
question.
Do you remember those, Trey?
I have never seen them before.
No, I never
Like,
saw.
I
them,
think
yeah.
they had little lights out of too, because you'd be
Oh, I did see.
you'd be
those.
running up like
Yeah.
early in the morning, like
Yeah.
if you're pre-fishing and not safe light yet, you're just trying to be like, is that a boat up there,
Or is that a plane that's just crashed in the
Yeah.
water? Like I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Those
Yeah,
aren't those like
sad.
weather station looking things.
no?
No.
No, that they're little like
Yeah, I never.
flappy paddles that
Yeah, I
spin
never
around.
saw
They're
those.
solar powered.
Yeah.
I bet the comrades loved them.
Well, that's another invasive species, right? The
Yeah,
cormorant.
well, they're supposed to migrate, and I just don't think they're migrating anymore. They're supposed to be a migratory bird that goes from Canada all the way down to like the Caribbean islands, and they
I don't
just
think
seem
they're
to
are
be
we
fat and happy at Jordan Lake.
are we gonna see an open season on cormorants?
They did it in South Carolina.
I'd have to defer to the wildlife office on that one.
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, yeah. Would we
No.
like to? Yes. Are we
Yeah.
going to? Probably not.
I think who was saying? I think it was Hal Abshire. He was saying, like, I wish they would just give us 1 week with those cormorants.
They did it in South Carolina.
Yeah,
and I
they
know
did it.
Canada.
Yeah.
There's a couple provinces in Canada that do like a 1 week season, and they just go out there and mash them. But
Yeah,
I mean, if you've ever seen Jordan, anybody that's local, like I don't know that there's any control. I mean, they've destroyed some of those little islands that used to be out there. All
They
the trees
did,
are
yeah.
dead.
yeah, that lake is so fertile that they just have
Mm.
all the food they want.
They really do.
every species in that lake can just
I wouldn't
eat
leave.
all day, and then there's still more
Yeah.
to go.
That's why I'm excited. I'm super excited. But we can transition to F1s. I'm really excited to see how it does, especially in that lake. I hope it works in them all.
Yeah,
But with Jordan, I think you have the potential to grow some. I mean, not that there aren't giants already in there, but
Yeah. So I'll hopefully get to know a lot of especially the tournament directors. Eventually, we're going to be coming to tournaments and making sure those are coming in tournament bags. So, and there are some theories that you can identify those based on sight, but we're going to actually be fin clipping a lot of those fish to make sure they're being caught in tournaments and things. And I'll be going out with my electric fishing boat and trying to recapture those fish.
We will be there
just to make sure that because they're supposed to grow bigger, faster,
Yeah.
When we hear that, do you know like roughly the timeline? Like when could you potentially start to see some of those fish reach a size where they might come in a tournament in a bag?
I think 4 years is when I'll start showing up at tournament weigh-ins to see if they're coming in. I think we'll hopefully see like a pound a year, maybe.
Yeah.
That's what we've been told. They're really the tiger bass that have been branded for years.
Yeah.
But it's a total experiment right now. We don't know how they're going to do in a large public reservoir. They've never really been widely studied in a large reservoir setting. They've always been studied in
and as I understand it,
ponds.
For everyone listening or watching, the F1s, that's just the first generation of a hybrid between a Florida strain and
A northern
whatever we
bass.
currently have here, which
and
I don't think we have any pure genetic yet.
No, we don't. So we have a lot of what we call intergrades, where we're actually just learned last year that Florida bass aren't restricted to peninsular Florida. They actually came all the way up into the eastern part of North Carolina. So we do have some native Florida bass in North Carolina, the way down east.
Is there any theories how that happened?
We're not sure.
Birds moving like little
bass swim.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but they can't go in the ocean and up and go back up a river.
I don't know.
Maybe they can. I mean, I've caught bass and redfish on the same piece of grass.
If you really want to nerd out on bass genetics, there was a study released by Yale University last year on genetics of the black bass, and there's actually a new scientific name now for largemouth bass.
What is it?
Fence panda?
Nigricans is what we're calling what used to be northern bass is now Micropterus nigricans.
Okay.
And they gave Florida bass Salmoides, which was always what we called all largemouth bass. But now Florida bass is its own species.
This stuff fascinates me.
But that's a whole wormhole.
On a tangent, I've been on like listen to like a lot of ancient DNA stuff. So I'm learning a lot of this stuff. So it's fascinating that what we thought we knew is not true at all. When we look at the genetics of any species out there.
Yeah. So we're learning, even I'm learning by the year based on these new genetic tools.
Okay.
About how these. So we have a lot of some of our little city lakes are like 60% Florida alleles in the little city lake.
Really?
So
That's wild.
there's no true F1s because you still have to have that pure Florida gene in the lake to have the true F1 genetics.
Yep.
There's a lot of Florida genes in North Carolina. That's why they don't bite after a cold front.
Makes sense. Because they are some of the shuttingest down fish that I've ever seen north of Florida whenever a cold front rolls through.
At what point do we know perhaps at what point kind of those Florida genes might get bred out? Because as you go through successive generations, I don't know how many we're going to stock and if we're going to be able to keep up with that rate with the amount of fish in some of these lakes. But
yeah, like every reservoir could eventually have its own little endemic population.
Yeah.
As long as there's nothing coming in or going out, they could all speciate, on the grand scale of time, depending on how long the reservoirs last. But that would take hundreds of years.
Yeah.
How many were between the three bodies of water? So it was Gaston, Jordan, and Norman, right?
Yeah. And Norman's the older project. There could be some weight in it. Norman more closer to time now than.
How many were dumped in each lake?
Oh, we're shooting for about 4 to 5 per acre.
Okay.
So that's based on at Jordan is probably right at 50,000 fish, 52,000. Okay. And then a little more at Gaston and way more at Norman, of course.
Oh yeah,
for 32,000.
Sure. And those are those 3-inch right around. Try to be
they're all
range
2 to 3 inches long. So they're pretty small when we put them in.
And that's a one-time deal right now, right?
No, we're gonna do it every year for at least 5 years.
Okay.
And that should give us enough to actually so we can recapture those fish and make sure they're growing at a faster rate because we are paying a pretty significant amount for them. The anglers are pitching in, which is great, but even the state is coming off some money for that. So
and you can still help with that.
We're going to get a return on that investment.
Yeah, all of our anglers, you can still help with that. I know I donated last year. Trey did. I think
Yep.
Ben did too. I'll post that link as well.
Yeah.
Are they the state still matching every dollar? They were matching dollar for dollar there for a bit.
So that's a Corey level question,
Okay.
for sure.
I'll get with
there's
Corey and we'll
some sort of state match going on there.
Yeah. So if you donate to stuff, if you have a little bit extra cash, maybe skip Starbucks for a day,
or 5 bags of soft plastic.
Yeah, 10 or 15 bucks can go a long way. That's several fish. So
but we won't be adding any lakes to that project anytime soon. These lakes are the
you got to do the study
ones in North.
If you want to save,
and it might be 10 years before we even truly know if they had that faster growth rate, because Jordan already has a really fast growth rate in our resident fish. So it'll be hard to beat Jordan.
Yeah,
I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So you see that a lot in Jordan. You'll catch a 7-8 pound fish, and it's not built like your normal 7 or 8 pound fish.
Yeah.
Is that just because of how nutrient rich Jordan is? And 2, does that have something to do with the population there? Because it does seem like there's less fish in Jordan per acre than you see in some of the other lakes.
Yeah. I think they have to swim less to get food. So they're not out. I mean, I don't have forward facing sonar yet, so I don't know how many pelagic bass there are out there.
Yeah.
But I think there's less of them in Jordan.
I have forward facing sonar, and there's definitely less of those pelagic.
So that was that's what I was going to
they're not searching for food very often.
That's what I was going to ask, because we all know, like, Harris, you can go out there 20, 30, 50 fish days easy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, especially in the early summer. Jordan, it's always a struggle to seem like get 10 bites, although your 10 bites might be a massive bag. Is that just because they're not hungry? They get all the food?
Yeah, there's so much natural prey in there. They're sitting next to a rock eating all day.
I tell everybody about that, because a lot of folks have asked me, like, they're like, I went out to Jordan with my forward facing and I didn't see anything. And I'm like, that's because they literally lay in the dirt in that lake. They do not move. Every once in a while off those points in the summer, you'll see them come off and suspend. But I still think most of the time they just kind of slide down a little bit and they just lay there, and they don't really need to move, like you said.
Yeah.
Because they can slide up on a point, they can feed. There's so between the white perch, the crappie, the other sunfish species, all the shad in that lake is unbelievable.
The amount of gizzard shad
it's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it before in my life.
I've seen it on side imaging on some of those ledges for like a mile straight. From the bottom of the ledge to almost the surface of the water is this shad and perch. And
I'll never forget the first time I saw it on 360. I thought something was broke, because my screen just went white. Like the whole screen just, there were so many shad. And then you start to see them in the pockets in the fall, and you see how many there are, because you can see them fish feeding on them. And it's like, you could literally walk across them.
Sometimes I find a different area, because it's so hard to compete.
Well, that's why bottom baits work so well on that lake. Carolina rigs, snagless jigs, all those things, like crank baits. Those fish are just sitting there getting fat. Spinner baits and stuff. So I mean, good luck going out there trying to scope them. I'm sure you can do it, but I'm still going to fish a good old jig in the bottom of Jordan Lake. Yeah. So you talked about DNA samples or taking samples of the fish, and I wanted to bring that up. So last year we held that Spring Warrior Clash in conjunction with the Piedmont Bass Classics. That was a phenomenal veteran warrior event, and appreciate you coming out to that. But when you came out to that, and there's a lot of people that listening that were not part of the event, what do you do when you take those samples? A, how does it happen? And then B, what are you looking for when you take DNA samples of a fish?
So that's just telling us the Florida allele percentage in those fish. And that's more or less a pet project of mine, where we're seeing if those large tournament caught fish have like maybe more Florida genes, maybe, or maybe even less. Maybe the northern side makes them a little more aggressive. So that's something we're looking into to see what those tournament captured fish are, and see if they're separate genetically from the fish I capture with the electric fishing boat.
And just so the folks listen know, you share it with us, but that isn't an instantaneous thing. It takes time to get all these results back.
We're working mainly with Auburn University on that. So I'll send all those fin clips out to Auburn. Eventually, we have, based on budget, we have to do it in stages, little batches at a time. So it could take 3 to 4 more years for me to get all those results back.
Wow!
But we'll slowly filter them in, and I'll make sure those get out as those come in.
I think that's one thing that we've tried to drive home when Corey was here, and I want to talk about it just briefly here. Is North Carolina NCWRC does not have the budget that some of the other states do. Everybody wants to get on the cesspool and argue about how the state can better manage our fisheries. You have to remember, guys like Seth, Corey, all the folks out there, all of our fisheries biologists, they are doing the absolute best they can with the money that they have available to them. They don't get a huge budget from the state. They get some money from your fishing license. That's why all that stuff is important. But at the end of the day, they're not operating with a budget like you see Texas, for instance. Everybody wants to compare it to Texas. Like if you look at the amount of money Texas parks and wildlife, I think they call it parks and wildlife, gets every year. It's massive compared to everywhere else. So they can do a lot of different things to do that. And like you said, you have to manage all fisheries and all fish species. You're not just managing largemouth bass. That's another thing us bass anglers can be bad about.
That's right.
We think we're the only ones that matter, right?
I'm guilty of it too. But
like don't kill the hydrilla because it's good for the bass. It might not be good for the lake, but I don't care. I want my bass. The crappie, all that stuff. You have to remember, like, that money that they do get every year budget, it has to go to all fish species. It has to go to these grass projects, habitat, all of that. So don't quit taking it out on these guys. They want to do. Trust me. I'm sure Seth would love to have a share lunker program and an unlimited budget to be able to put giant fish stocking and spawning and do all of that. But it's just not realistic based upon the budget and stuff like that. Maybe someday, we've had more big tournament series come here. We've had more folks coming to fish. Maybe you'll get more of those dollars from tourism put towards fishing because they're coming here to do that. Who knows? That's why it's important to vote and look at people's stances on stuff like that. And we're not getting political, but if those things are important to you, you need to take all that into account because that's really what controls it. And also stop beating up the NCWRC about flounder and trout because it is not them.
That's a whole different division.
But and just one last thing on the fin clips, Trey talked about them coming out to the event last year. If you listen to our episode last week, we had Take Warrior Fishing Inc. They have the Warrior Fishing event coming up on May 18th. They still need boaters. There is a waiting list. If you're a vet and you're interested, you can sign up. I'm going to keep linking that in the description. If you're a boater, it's free. There's no entry fees for anybody. They'll pair you with a veteran. There's going to be a bass tournament out there. Doug with Piedmont Bass Classics FL Outdoors is going to do all the weighing and stuff. It's a totally free event from both sides. All you're going to do is have some gas money. And it's important we get our veterans into that outdoor therapy. So if you're available, go sign up. Let them know you'll be there. I'll be there boating. Trey will be there either boating or fishing, depending on if they still need boaters or not. I think Ben said he's gonna be out of town, so he won't be able to make it, unfortunately. But if you're a boater, all you're gonna have is gas money, man, and you could literally save somebody's life because we said it on the show before. Trey credits with was it Take a Warrior Fishing Warrior on the Water with saving him back in the day and the stuff he was going through. And so it's important that we get folks out. That little bit of gas money, you're going fishing somewhere anyway. Go to Harris, have a good day. They should still be up shallow. It's going to be a blast, and I'm looking forward to being there. So if you can, go sign up and do that. Speaking of Harris, that's May 18th. A hot topic right now. Everybody knows is going through the stages, the slot limit. It's finally looking like we might get that removed on Shearon Harris. Can you talk a little bit about that process, when it'll take effect, and if there's anything that anglers can do that want to see that to kind of help make sure that goes through this year?
Yeah, well, we're past that public comment period. That's usually right around December, January timeframe where you can submit a, yay or nay comment online. So right now, our board of our commissioners, the WRC commissioners, has approved that whole, like, most of the fisheries regulation changes for next cycle. So that now goes to the state level rules review commission, and it's reviewed by the actual state commission. And then there is one caveat where, like, if we get 10 formal letters sent to Raleigh or people are against it, just 10 letters, then that could kill it.
We might want to cut that part out.
Yeah, we might not put that in there.
So if you do feel strongly against it, you can send Raleigh a letter if you are against it.
I'm going to tell you, don't do it.
Let's talk about why it's important that this is being put in front of, I guess you would call it, legislation to change the law on the lake, right? Like, why now are we looking to remove the slot limit?
Yeah, we don't think it did what we wanted it to. That would have been the late 90s, early 2000s when that was put in place. And it's called a protected slot limit because you're protecting that group of fish, those 16 to 20s, from harvest.
You say that because I want to mention this because this came up when we did some shorts in the videos before, because red fishermen and saltwater fishermen, like, their slot limit, that's what you have to harvest. And so there is a little bit of confusion when you're talking about it, that in North Carolina, I think most bass fishing slot limits, it's a protected class. You cannot take those. Yeah. Whereas some other species, that's the only ones you can take. And so when you just have to understand that when you start debating and talking about this, make sure you're talking about the same thing. And
Sure.
That's right. Yeah. A lot of the freshwater slot limits were born in the time of, pretty high bass harvest. So you had like the wall hangers going on the wall.
Yeah.
And you had the harvest of those meaty little 14 to 16 inchers actually being consumed, by anglers. But I just don't think we've had that since the middle 2000s on.
Yeah.
I can say we've seen
That
it.
protected group of fish has just gotten way more numerous in that lake as many anglers have learned.
We've definitely seen that as anglers. Like I was telling you earlier, Trey and I will spend. It's fun. Ben will come out. Like, it's a fun lake to fish in the summer because they do school up like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can go out there and catch 50 or 60 fish, and they're all 17 to 19 inches, and they're fun fish to catch. But there's obviously an issue when that's all that you're catching. Like an over now is a super rare thing. And I'm sure with your shock, you see more because you're there at the right time. But from a fishing standpoint, it seems to be a lot less frequent that we're seeing those overs. And even if you look at the few tournaments that still do go out there, because a lot of them stop because of the slot limit frustration and where we're at. Even those, like, if you're lucky to see one or two brought in, in a tournament, when before, I mean, there was a 40 some pound bag that guy had. That video is still on YouTube if anybody wants to go watch. It doesn't fish like that anymore because the hydrilla is not in there. But it's we're not going to get into that debate. It's not all the state's fault. I've been arguing with people on Facebook for the last month. Quit blaming them for that too, because it's not all their fault. And
hydrilla can hurt a lake too. You can really get high recruitment, what we call recruitment, whereas you get a lot of those 12 inchers actually recruiting to the adult population, and you can actually get an overpopulation when you have high recruitment. So sometimes hydrilla can cause that bad scenario. But
that's interesting.
So there's no concerns on removing from the biologist standpoint, there's no concerns on removing the protected slot limit on that lake based on the numerous amounts of 14 to 19 inch bass, because there are. I mean, I went out there 2 days ago and I caught all 17, 18 inch bass, 16 to 18 inch bass. And you're absolutely right. Like, to find a 20 plus inch class fish, it's a little bit more challenging. I did want to ask you about this though. And I know that the, years ago they used to, this is just pure curiosity, but years ago they used to drop the buoys and you used to be able to go back and fish like the spillway and stuff like that. Duke has obviously got, the buoys and stuff like that. When you guys do your shocks and stuff on that lake, are you allowed to go back in there and take samples though?
I assume they would. So that's District 3. That'll be Kirk.
Oh,
and
yeah,
David.
that's right.
But I assume they're allowed to go just about anywhere as long as they call Duke beforehand and say, hey, we're going to be in the restricted area.
So as long as I have a badge, because
we'll put a NCWRC sticker on the side of the boat.
I'm just kidding. I don't condone falsifying.
That's where all the overs are living.
I'm telling you right now.
Can we go with the shock team and then just transport them to another side of the lake?
Corey already offered that for us to go out there and participate in that. Another thing I wanted to ask about, and this is for any fishery in North Carolina. But there's been a lot of initiatives in other states, and I know that they have one on Jordan that happens frequently, but applying to do a community lake cleanup initiative, right? So a couple of years ago, I reached out to the game warden because I didn't know who to reach out to, because I was interested in organizing a giant event and breaking down Shearon Harris into different sectors and assigning bass boats to clean up and just get rid of the garbage, because that's another way that you can protect the wildlife and the habitat is by picking up your crap. It's super frustrating, and usually happens after the summer's over with everyone wakeboarding and stuff. So, but
just like those dirty.
Nevertheless, if somebody wants to run an initiative like that, do you know the process of how they go through that?
Yeah, it'd probably be pretty simple. You just call Duke Lake Services if it's a Duke reservoir. You probably just Google Duke Energy Lake Services and just let them know you're going to be doing a lake cleanup. They'd probably be all for it. I'm sure they wouldn't be against it.
Okay.
And then the Corps of Engineers at any, like Jordan would be a Corps lake. You just probably have to call that Corps office there and let them know you want.
There is a group that does an event on Jordan every year.
big orange trash bags. That's all I know. They have tons of them. So, because last year we and we didn't get it on film, but there was a bald eagle that was unfortunately wrapped up in some fishing line, and it happens, right? Like a lot of bank fishermen, and no dig on you guys, but like cleaning up that line is very important. Same thing for the boaters and stuff. But anything that we can do to protect the lakes, if it's probably a lot easier process than you think. And Seth just made it known that it was an easy process. So I'm definitely going to be reaching out probably next year to spearhead an event like that and get some donor support so that we can do a lake cleanup event, probably late summer, early fall. So that's all I had. I just wanted to talk about that. I just want to talk about that. I want to know, right? Like, I don't want to break any rules, but I also want to figure out the process. And it's not like that's a real public known thing. It's like, hey, I want to clean the lake. Yeah, sure, go for it. Well, there's probably some sort of permission I got to ask for. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Of course, to get into those restricted areas, you need to reach out to.
I'm definitely going to reach out to Dave.
Maybe we can get a day pass.
Yeah, for sure.
So obviously we know, invasive species are a big deal. We've seen a new alert come out with the zebra mussels.
Oh, yeah.
We can talk about that a little bit, but there's other invasive fish species that people do like to catch. And I know they cause a lot of issues, and that's some of the catfish species. We've had some questions about which ones are native and which aren't. Can you talk a little bit on that and the importance of trying to curb those populations a little bit?
Yeah. So in Jordan, we actually have native white catfish. So those, I kind of call them just little fatty catfish. They have the big bellies typically.
Oh, yeah.
They're kind of two-tone. They got white on the bottom and gray on top.
I haven't caught one for 10 years. It's when I used to go out there and I was more learning how to fish, and I had night crawls because I was trying to catch anything I could at the time. And I caught a few of them. They were small.
I was out there.
Yeah, they don't get very big. They might get like 19 to 22 inches.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're candy bars to a flathead.
Really?
Yeah. Now, flatheads have been in Jordan for a while, and they seem to be coexisting pretty well. But the flatheads will gobble them things right up.
That's awesome.
And flatheads and blues are not supposed to be anywhere in the state except for those western slope.
There ain't no way to control that now, though.
Except the state rivers.
And we actually have to take responsibility for the coastal rivers. That was like an experimental stocking in the 60s in the news. So we actually have to own that one.
Yeah.
I mean, Corey told us, we've learned lessons from things we did in the past,
but that
weren't the best thing.
That was the ghost of fisheries past. We haven't done that in a long time.
What about channel cats? Are they native?
They're naturalized, so they've been brought in since the turn of the century to the rivers. So they're more or less naturalized, but they are native to the Mississippi as well.
Naturalized to our waterways.
So there's really at this point nothing that we can do for the blue and the flatheads. I mean, do you recommend trying to harvest some? From time to time. I know the catfishing guys are going to hate to hear that because that's a whole clique there.
Yeah, and they're probably doing what the bass fishermen are and policing themselves.
Yeah, sure. They're probably using bass for bait.
The little meaty ones and let the big ones go. Okay. But any level of harvest for just about any sport fishery is good to have some level of harvest.
I didn't even know there were flatheads in Jordan.
Nope.
Is there any big ones in there?
They're not doing well because we don't see a ton of them. Like in gill nets and stuff, we don't encounter a ton of them, but they are in there.
I'm surprised they don't.
I still haven't confirmed blue cats, but I think it's just a matter of time before we see blue cats brought in.
I want to switch gears on species of bass, and I know that you don't cover the western zone, but we do have smallmouth in the Yadkin chain, correct?
Yeah, up above High Rock in the river above High Rock. I think there's a few, and there's actually some actual Kentucky spots up there in the Yadkin River. Somewhere.
We've seen some of those
true spotted bass.
Yeah, true spotted bass, and the only way you can tell the difference is by the caudal peduncle, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
I had to say it.
And we've got so many crazy hybrids going on. You never truly know what a spot is anymore. Yeah, because there's so many hybridizations going on.
Do we have any initiatives for like smallmouth in our region at all?
No, our water's probably too warm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I couldn't tell you not to move Alabama bass around and then go stocking a non-native bass.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
smallmouth are another Mississippi River drainage fish.
Oh wow,
so they're western slope.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So there's a few in Tiller, isn't there?
Yeah, there's some in Tiller.
Are they?
Yeah,
I think they wait a few.
PD for it.
But no, they come down to Uhari.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that was a relic of the 60s again.
That was
so down here. Avance Ferry.
Yes.
There were
Yeah.
some, I think there were some smallmouths put there at one point.
Yes,
in time
yes,
that
because I
never
heard some
took.
old timers tell me.
Yeah, never took. And then they put them in the Uwharrie River as well. And I think those have lasted. And the Dan River.
And that's why they're in
up north of Eden or west of Eden, upstream of Eden.
And that's why they're in James and because they're all eastern slope too. That those waterways. Yeah.
So that was the 60s.
Okay.
Well, the good thing is they're not in there anymore.
Yeah.
Well, they're they're
Now they're spots.
hybridizing. Yeah.
So
And they might have even been in that river before James was impounded, maybe.
Yeah,
Potentially.
potentially.
We'd
Have to go back in the records.
What a
Yeah.
weekend. I didn't realize it was that new of a lake.
No. So Jordan, last thing on Jordan for me. So we talked Harris, we talked a lot of different water systems, but Jordan, there's a lot of striper fishermen, right?
Yeah.
We don't cover a lot of striper topics, but I did want to ask this. You're not catching the striper in Jordan like you used to catch
That's
them because
right,
they're not
yeah.
being stocked, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Is-
2020 was the last stocking year.
Is that going to be the last stock of stripers?
I think so. It's just getting too hot in the summertime, especially when we don't get the water movement, won't get the rains in the summer. They suffocate,
die.
basically.
Yeah.
Because it gets too hot and they have to eat and eat and eat, and then the water's not moving and the water gets too hot and they just struggle.
Yep.
So we saw them get to like 22 inches, and then we just never saw them bigger than.
That's interesting because there's a video on YouTube from a decade or 15 years ago, striper fishing on Jordan. There were some big stripers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I caught one about 5 pounds in 2017 on topwater in the S turns, believe it or not.
Yeah.
That was of course, they're not hardy. So it was over 20 inches because it was, when I put it back, it died, but it was a legal harvest. So I took it home and it was legal harvest. And, but all the ones I've caught since I've been out since has been like 17, 18 inch.
Yeah.
So that would make, and that's been after 2020. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Something changed in like 2012 in Jordan where it just seemed to get more eutrophic than ever. And it's just been an exponential increase since then.
Yeah.
All that population increase around Raleigh is
Development,
just probably not helping things with all the lawn fertilizer and things washing in. So.
Yeah. So we should, never mind. I'm not even going to say it.
There's still a few of them big ones around.
Yeah,
I've hooked them.
And right now there's probably less striper. So the average size of each individual is probably larger. So there's probably some pretty decent Jordan Lake stripers.
I've caught a few in the river, pretty good ones over 20
So
inches.
if you were going to recommend, and I think I already know the answer, but if you were going to recommend to our striper buddies out there, where should they go fishing for striper?
It's probably seasonal. I bet in wintertime you can catch them just about everywhere. But then when summer hits, they're probably going to go down to that Hall River arm and getting as much flow as they can if there is any flow coming down the river, because they're going to want to seek out that flowing water.
Or just go to Bugs Island.
Because they're naturally anadromous fish. They're supposed to be out in the ocean in summer, and then they come up the rivers in the spring to spawn. So they're going to be following that flow.
Because
we actually lose, like when we did stock the little 4-inchers, we'd lose them through the dam because any big flood, they'd get washed through the dam and go down the Cape Fear.
And I know it's outside your district, but the stripers do run all the way up to the Buckhorn Dam.
They could. One of the locks is not operable right now. They're supposed to operate it for anadromous passage, but I think one of the hurricanes knocked one of them locks out almost completely, and they haven't been able to really operate it much lately.
Okay.
There's actually a Clemson University student working on that very thing to try to get more passage up the Cape Fear River.
Awesome.
So that's pretty interesting. You guys got a lot of partnerships with, NCWRC has a lot of partnerships with, big universities, Ivy League schools and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How does that work? When you want somebody to take the initiative because they probably provide the funding, maybe, or they jump on it because they want their students to learn how to do it. How does that relationship work? Just out of pure curiosity.
Yeah, the research question typically starts on our end where we have a question we really want to research, but we don't really have the staff time to get the project done. So that's when we'll approach a university about maybe starting a graduate student on that project.
Really?
And those projects are usually hyper focused on one species or even one reservoir.
Okay.
And then
the stripers in Jordan were actually part of a grad student from NC State years ago, where he like tracked the striped bass abundance across the state and really was able to help us make our decision to really slow down on stripers in Jordan, because Jordan was low on that list of
So when it comes to public information, and like a lot of people have questions, and they'll hit us with questions, and we appreciate it. So then we'll reach out to you and get the answers. But in general, if anglers or anybody has questions about like current research, ongoing research, whatever, historical data, all that stuff, is that available and open to the public?
Yeah, for sure. Just call me.
Just call you.
That'd be the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Just call me and let me know what reservoir or river lake you're interested in, and we'll dig up. Some of it might be old, especially the city lake. Some of that data is probably getting pretty old. But
sure.
We try to keep the big reservoirs pretty recent. Like we have last spring where we did a full largemouth survey of Jordan Lake last spring, so it's not even a year old yet.
Has that been published online yet?
Yeah, so our reports don't go online, but our fact sheets.
The fact sheets, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I could get you a copy of the report. It's pretty full of jargon and hard to understand, but I can get that.
Yeah, send that over.
So for all you tournament anglers out there, we're not going to tell you. We're going to benefit from it.
Yeah, there are no maps. So the best fish biologists are statisticians. There's a lot of stats in fisheries, and I don't know anything about behavior, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
So anything that helps me,
can we get the raw
research.
data?
Oh, you're
you want
Chat GPT.
You want the site map?
All right.
Yeah,
Corey may have given us a little juice.
We just need some. I just need a grid coordinate lat long. It does not matter. It's fine. You brought up AI. Are you guys using AI for anything when it comes to data?
Yeah, we're hoping it'll help us with our vegetation plots, where we can like have it analyze photos for us and estimate percent coverage and things like that. We're hoping that'll be a valuable tool for that.
One of the biggest challenges with any sort of like data analytics is data literacy.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of people are finding that, artificial intelligence really can help you as long as you provide it with clean data.
Yeah.
It can help you break down and identify trends and stuff like that. So that's really interesting. I know AI is beautiful, but there's a lot of fear with AI, specifically with like journalists and writers and stuff like that. They're kind of getting worked out of a job a little bit, but that's interesting. And so artificial intelligence really helping NCWRC. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So I wish it would help me catch a bass.
I could.
It might be good for me to go through like the year of a Piedmont fish biologist. The coast is a whole different ballgame because they have a lot of anadromous fish, but like right now in the spring, we're about to do all of our broodfish collections for all of our hybrids. And we used to collect striped bass broodfish, but we don't do a ton of striped bass stocking anymore. So that'll be largemouth and white bass and striped bass in the spring. And then we do all our plants all summer long. And then I get out the crappie equipment and I do trap netting for crappie.
Yeah.
Like last October, we caught like 1,300 crappie in Jordan Lake in 4 nights.
Really?
Yeah. So that's the fall.
Good night.
How many 10-pound largemouth did you catch on accident?
Oh, those nets don't really catch any of those fish. So occasionally in the gill nets for the striped bass, we'll encounter a few largemouth, but they're pretty good at evading the gill nets too.
What is the largest largemouth you've ever got out of any of these lakes?
That's Lake Reese in Randolph County. It's a small city lake for Asheboro, city of Asheboro. Lake Reese is got some great big old largemouth.
What's
the biggest weight there?
It was only 9.7. So once they hit 10 pounds, we see them, but they don't get stunned and float up like you see on those videos. They actually have so much muscle mass that they get away from the boat really easily.
Really?
You got to be quick with the net to get the giants.
So
I think I've seen some 12, 13 pounders before that.
And they're just like, I'm getting away from you. Yeah.
Yeah. There's another lake we talked about earlier where I might have seen one about that size.
We got some road
we can
trips,
talk more
boys.
about that offline.
So when
I know where I'm going next week.
So if I fell in the water on your boat when you're shocking, would it zap me pretty bad?
It would, it could potentially kill you. It's 2,000 volts.
God.
But the driver has a pedal that if it's off, the electricity's off, and then the netter's standing on a pad that's a switch.
So you really trust the guy that rigged the boat.
So why is it then? What's the difference with the fish biology? Why doesn't it just stuns them instead of whacking us, Brian out there?
Yeah, so it's just jolts their muscles stiff for like less than 3 minutes most of the time. They'll come back in about 3 minutes in the live well.
So it's like getting tased as a
Yeah,
human.
basically a taser. Yeah, is all it's doing.
Speaking
And
of
we can control the waveform that comes out
Yeah.
of the boat. We have a box that can control all
that is so cool. What is the weirdest thing that ever came floating up?
Oh, we see a lot of common carp, and we see a lot of soft shell turtles. Those
Really?
big
Oh, yeah.
flat
Oh,
frog
yeah.
turtles.
Leather
Nothing too
bags.
crazy.
Yeah. No dead bodies or nothing.
No dead bodies. Gill nets is when I get concerned about bodies and things. You know,
I
when
can
we're hauling.
imagine.
Have you ever been on Jordan in wintertime and seen two buoys about 200 feet apart, two orange buoys? That's our gill nets in wintertime.
Oh, I gotcha.
We haven't done a gill net survey in a while. I probably need to plan one, but
Yeah. That's interesting.
What are you targeting with the gill nets? Striper? Or?
stripers, yeah, that's usually what we call maronid. So it's our hybrid striped bass. And white bass would be under that umbrella too. Jordan has a really good population
they
of
do.
white
Yeah,
bass.
they do.
There's a
Yeah.
pile.
Are they native?
They are. Well, no, the white bass are introduced way back when. You know,
Everything goes back to
everything
the
goes
Is that a
back
60s experiment?
60s was everything.
They're not in Harris, are they?
Not
No,
as
that
much,
would hurt.
I've
and
never
that's probably
caught
the lack of flow. They want
Yeah.
that flow
No, that
in the
makes sense,
springtime,
yeah.
so they leave the lake. They go in the rivers. They're like a freshwater anadromous
Yeah, they-
fish, and they spawn in the river and come back.
Okay.
Yeah, so Falls Lake has some of that too. We actually just tracked some of those white bass coming out of Falls up the River.
Mm.
They caught
Probably
some
they were
giants I
spawning.
saw in the
Yeah,
Falls is another great fishery that we haven't talked about,
Yeah.
but they are producing some giant largemouth out of that lake as well.
yeah.
You talked, well, first of all, what kind of technology do you guys have on your boat when you're trying to find these fish? Are you using like side scan imaging and stuff like that, or is it just like hot spots that you traditionally get the fish?
Yeah, like a lot of districts just have the set transects that they'll go to year after year after year. We randomize a little more, where we have like a site every 500 meters, and we'll choose from that suite of sites. So we try to cover the whole lake
Okay.
and do it in about 4 to 5 days if we can, but sometimes it'll take longer. And we shoot for about 400 fish
Okay.
out of
Okay.
each lake. So
Okay.
you'd be surprised how many bass can be caught in one little stretch of bank.
Well, some guy told me this a few years ago. I forget. I think he was on a Tennessee River Lake, and he watched 3 guys fish a dock in front of him,
Mhm.
and then he fished that dock, and no one caught a fish. And the state was out there shocking,
Yeah.
and about 15 largemouth came out from under that, that area. So
Yeah.
it's just like, well, sometimes I just don't want to eat.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
So the last question I have for you, brother, is you talked about you said the word live well earlier, and that brought up something. I heard you talk about it, last year, and we talk about fish care, right? We're adamant about fish care because if we are going to release them back into the water, we want to make sure that they're not going to float up and die 20 minutes after. There's a lot of technology out there, like the fish lung. You got a lot of guys using G juice and different like things like that. Pool noodles in there so they don't get their backs beat up, fin clips, fizzing, all the above, right? The answer is D. But from your perspective, where does the most mortality come from in live wells? Like, what are guys doing wrong?
Temperature. Yeah, you want to keep the temperature down. And G juice, probably all G juice is just some salt water. So you want to have some level of salt in there. Our hatchery trucks shoot for about 3%
Okay.
salinity on the hatchery truck. So you want to keep that temperature below 80, maybe even 75 in summertime. Use some ice in there if you need to, and just keep temperature low and stable. So
Now-
like if you fill your live well up in the morning in the summer, put some ice in there, put it on recirc, and don't open it very much. Just keep it at a stable temperature all day, and don't let it spike up and down.
See, that's a mistake I have probably made because I'll dump my ice in there in the morning, and then I won't start to fill it all up from the lake water until I catch my first fish.
Right.
Because I figure I want that ice to last all day, but that's not keeping the temperature stable. So
Yeah.
that's a lesson learned for me here is that just go ahead and fill it up.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
mean, we saw it last year when you were taking the fin samples. Like, we saw a lot of fish that were extremely beat up
Yeah.
from the live wells, right? So
Yeah, and those could have been caught several tournaments. That couldn't
Yeah.
have been their first one, maybe.
right. And so besides cooling the water down, like make sure your live wells are filled all the way up, right?
Yeah.
That way there's no sloshing and stuff like that.
But yeah, it's interesting because you get there's a lot of different perspectives on live well management and fish care and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, it's good to hear it from you. Like, just keep the temperature down. Don't open it a lot. And the whole, the last thing, like the whole, dumping Mountain Dew or a fizzy deal down their gills. Is that actually a real thing?
I don't think so. I think it's just washing the blood away most.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's doing much.
It's like peroxide, just bloop.
Jesse Wise, credit Mountain Dew with saving that big one he caught down there.
It's possible,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah, I doubt it's doing too awful much, especially once you put them back in the water. It probably all gets washed right away.
Yeah. I've never done the Mountain Dew, but there's a lot of people that swear by it. And I mean, I guess it can't hurt if it's not killing them and it's not hurting them. Then if you think it works, I guess keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean,
and we're so blessed with largemouth abundance. Like, don't beat yourself up over killing one or two a year. It's not a huge deal or something.
Yeah, don't worry about that quarter-pound penalty. It's going to be
that's a different story.
Well, yeah, there's perspectives. There's tournament anglers' perspective, and then there's everyone else. Right?
Yeah.
That's the way that this game is treated. So but from a just general perspective, like, our largemouth population is healthy.
Yeah.
Our lakes are doing well.
Yeah.
If you harvest to 5 within the creel limit, like, it's going to be okay. If you like to eat bass, don't shame people for eating what they're allowed to eat as long as they have a fishing license.
That's right. Yeah. And if there ever was an over harvest situation, I would find that in my data and we'd step in with regulations.
Yep.
So that's my job to step in.
Do shame clubs and tournaments that kill a bunch of fish and throw them back, though.
Yeah.
Like my Mayo incident last year.
That's
right.
I
was going to fight.
I was going to ask you what lake that was.
It was Mayo. I was going to fight an entire Virginia club. I was I've never been so mad in my life.
Yeah.
I'm just disgusted with what I saw.
So we try our little club in Alamance County. We try to take all our dead ones in summer home with us.
We made that pretty much a rule in our club this year that if you kill one, take it with you, or we'll collect them and we'll find somebody that'll take them if you're not going to eat them. But the optics are huge, and
that's right.
The environmentalists, the anti-fishing, hunting, all of that stuff, when they come and see a bunch of fish floating at the ramp,
that's right. Yeah,
the first people they blame is the tournament guys. The recreational guys blame the tournament guys, and it's just then you get all the infighting and all the BS that we see all the time.
And you went around fizzing those fish that you.
I tried, yeah. I think I saved probably 2 of them, but some of them you could tell just floated belly up in the live well all day.
Okay.
Tried to do what I could, but the ones that were still kicking, I fizzed and tried to get them back. Like I said, I probably fizzed, I don't know, 7 or 8 of the ones that were floating. Some of them were long dead. But if they had any sign of fin movement, I tried.
Yeah.
Even though I know that's not necessarily mean that there was any chance, but was able to save a few. But it was just bad.
So you guys have on the bottom of the NCWRC website, you actually have the link, I believe, to what's her name?
Barb Elliott.
Barb Elliott.
Yeah.
And how to properly fizz a fish. So there's no excuse, right? You can go on YouTube. You can go to ncwrc.gov. Is it gov? Is it?
I don't think it's gov. It's org.
Org. Yeah. ncwrc.org. And you can scroll down to the bottom and you can check out the link for Barb Elliott and how to properly fizz.
.com.
.com. Whatever. Just Google
We're all
NCWRC. And go check that out if you're ever wondering, because education is power. Like, this is how we do conserve our population of fish and our habitat and all that stuff. So getting smarter is a good thing.
And Barb sells those kits. I've talked about them before. They're cheap. She sells them for what she has into them. She doesn't make any money off of them. You can shoot her a message. I think I bought like 10 last year, and I gave Trey one. Gave my dad. I have 2 in the boat.
Gave me one.
I got Ben one. And there's really nice printed colored instruction in there that are on paper that won't get destroyed by water. And she'll give you her phone number when you order it and say, if you're out there and you're not sure, call me and I will FaceTime, walk you through it. And I'm sure you could reach out to Seth or anybody if you had questions about it, and they could point you to the resources. So that to me is the number one thing we can do in the summertime with those fishes.
Absolutely.
With those fishes to fizz them properly because fin clips don't work, and I think it's been proven.
I've got one other question I'm curious about. So, are there any lakes in your district, or if you know in the state, that maybe the largemouth population isn't doing as well, and probably outside the spotted bass lakes now, but predominantly largemouth? Are there any that, or they're over harvested or way under harvested? Like they're just not healthy.
Yeah, so that's a lot of our city lake. Well, not a lot. I'm not gonna say a lot, but we have a few city lakes where we actually have an overpopulation. Where you see like a farm pond that's full of little bass. We're actually seeing that at like the 800 to 1,200 acre scale now, where we're just not getting hardly any harvest or any tournament pressure or anything going on at those reservoirs, and they're stunting out. We'll get a 12-inch fish that's like 7 years old. Yeah,
that's what we should do some of our.
So what are some of those reservoirs
Kamak,
that need that help?
Kamak in Alamance County, just north of Burlington, and then we see that at Holt
Okay.
/ Butner. Some people call it Butner.
Okay, I've heard.
Oh, I know where that's at. Training grounds are up there.
So those are my true stunted populations, because our reservoirs are so fertile. There's never a lack of fish. It's usually an overpopulation.
Okay.
And the crappie will do that real easy.
Yeah. Are those both of those city lakes or smaller lakes? Are they fishable from the bank, all sides by the public?
So no.
Okay.
So they have a main entry point there, and you usually have to launch a boat and go from there.
I got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great opportunity to take some veterans fishing and get them out there and just start schwacking some 12 and catch a whole
we
bunch.
have a 10 fish creel with 2 over 14, so you can have 8 any size and 2 over 14
per person per day.
per license.
Sounds
day.
like a fish
Per
fry
license.
right there.
There you go.
Yeah, it does sound like if you like to eat bass, a fish fry.
Hey,
You can
hey,
fry a dog turd and it'll still
look,
taste
when
good.
you,
That's true.
Doesn't matter. Freshwater fish, you just bread them, dip them in the grease.
Yeah.
That you can.
They're
They're
good
all
to go.
edible. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
dip them some ketchup or something. If you hot sauce, if you need.
I'm gonna
to.
start eating a whole bunch of big blue cats.
Yeah. So I think the further west you go, we might, once you lose some of that fertility in the lakes, there might be some more issues going on there.
Yeah.
As far as foraging things, but in the Piedmont, we don't have any issues with numbers of fish.
Well, we live in a good
Can-
area.
Yes, we do.
Can you, in layman's term, because I've had this question a couple of times, explain fertility and what makes a lake super fertile versus not as fertile? What is it about that water?
Yeah, a lot of times it's urban environments because you got fertilizer runoff and even wastewater treatment not being treated as well in some places. So just that flowing into the river and then into the reservoir can just boost that bottom of the food web up, and that just keeps going up the chain from there.
Are those a consideration when they're applying for licenses for like residential and commercial developments? Like biology has to play a role in voting whether they're going to allow it or not, correct?
Yeah. I'm not sure. It's probably city specific,
Yeah.
Based on the municipality.
That's probably a
That play,
DEQ question,
Yeah, and DEQ is a lot more involved in that kind of thing. So
which I can get somebody from DEQ if
Yeah.
you want.
probably could, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a good contact there. It's
Yeah,
local.
well,
It
we
does
gotta
all
go.
They're the
we got-
chemist.
Yeah.
DEQ has the chemist, so they
Yeah.
can really talk to you about the chemistry of all that and how that works with the phosphorus and things.
And we do an episode of Breaking Bad. On
That's right. Yeah, we can't teach them how to cook meth.
Yeah, but what about that bash crack? That's what
So
we're
hopefully at Harris that'll help us. Once we get
For
some
sure.
plants growing, the plants will actually use them nutrients and grow better.
I'll be one of your
Advanced.
primary scout, the recon guys, because I'm always on that lake, and I can tell you I've already seen changes.
Yeah, the
Um,
Lotus I think is doing well there.
Yep. So it's looking good, but just, for all you listeners and stuff, understand like this stuff doesn't happen overnight. We've said it numerous times. It's all conditional. So once the environment changes, it could hinder, it could enable, it just depends. But it's on you with your votes and your voices and stuff to make sure that you're speaking up. And like Corey said last year, anglers that are consistent on the water are usually a year to 2 years ahead
That's
of the biologists and stuff like that, because they just see stuff changing over time. So if you see stuff going in a negative trend, reach out to Seth, reach out to Corey, reach out to anybody in NCWRC and make it known. Hey, this is my observation on what's going on. They'll take it seriously. I
Because
promise you.
I 1,000% give us
We
the
will,
credit for
yeah.
the slot limit on here.
So, yeah.
Because I brought it up with Corey when he was on, and I was like, "We need to do something about it." And he was like, "Every time we do, it gets voted down." I'm like, "Try it again." And then it was this winter it came up again. So I'm telling everybody that was because of us.
knock on wood. That's
yeah,
true.
no kidding.
Yep. So we work for you guys. Our funding is based on license sales, and we work for the fishing license holders of the states.
Buy your licenses, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we're getting ready to wrap up here. I wanted to ask you, Seth, do you have any final thoughts or closing comments that you really want to push to, the audience and besides don't transport fish or anything like that? Is there anything you really want to say to them?
Yeah. Don't be afraid to reach out to us. We're not like cloaked in a veil of secrecy. We'll gladly give you info. I'll talk to, I'm a fisherman on Saturday, so I'll talk to you about fishing these lakes if you want me to.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out to us with any questions or concerns you have, and we'll make sure that those get to the right people if we can't answer your questions.
Definitely.
Awesome.
You guys got anything?
No, I just I appreciate you coming in, Seth. It's been a lot of really good information. We'll be interested to get you back after your surveys this year and kind of see how things are looking. And I'm sure we're going to get a ton of questions from folks when they listen to this about it. And like Seth said, these guys aren't it's not a conspiracy to hide things from everybody. All of the stuff that you see on Facebook and these other forums and Bass Talk and blah, 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 that it's all a big conspiracy against the fishermen, and that it's not true. We've got to know these folks. We've got to talk to them. I know Seth is heavily involved with his bass club, so he's a tournament angler. So, selfishly, he cares as much as we do as tournament anglers about the bass fishing and the conditions of those. And they do have all of the conservation in our waterways in their best interest in making them healthy so that their kids can do what we've been doing, and we can teach our kids and grandkids. And I know it's cliche, but that's really what it's about. And if we don't do something, if we don't stop moving Alabama bass, stop the bucket biology, then we're going to destroy them, and you're going to end up catching Jordan Lake's going to be full of 13-inch spots, and that's all you're going to catch if somebody puts them in there. So just don't put them in there because we don't want that.
I'll have to become a catfisherman.
I'll have to go to Santee Cooper.
Nothing against catfishermen, Eric. Appreciate it. Ben, what you got, man?
No, I appreciate. I'll be honest, like these are some of my favorite episodes to do it and talk about because I love learning about this information. And there's just so much misinformation out there, or disinformation. People just don't know. It's all wives' tales, and it's also to actually get the facts. And what's cool, as we talked about with the genetics and the studies that's been going on, and the more studies, like we certainly saw it in Texas, like the telemetry studies and all, like we are just learning more and more. And of course, we said we were going to talk about live scope and we won't, but that is allowed anglers to pick up on bass behavior that is against what we thought was the case. And we're just learning, we're constantly learning more and more. So I think over the next few years, we're just going to have way more information about about both the bass species and then also the forage with them. So I appreciate that. I love learning about this stuff.
You guys probably know more about behavior than I do. I know about population dynamics and statistics and like the population as a whole, but I don't know much about behavior, as my tournament results will tell you.
I know that every lake that I fish is a gar hole.
Well, you know what, Seth, with our powers combined, we can be captain, save the planet. No, man,
he's our hero.
We appreciate it. NCWRC has been a friend of the show for a long time, and you guys do great work, and we want to support you any way that we can. We appreciate the final thoughts and the words to the audience. If you got anything that you want to ask Seth or ask us, just reach out. Seth's information is available as well. We'll make sure to push that out to you guys. Like you said, if you find or if you even think you have a spotted bass, go ahead and put it in your live well and take pictures of it and all that good stuff. And Seth, we appreciate you coming in. NCWRC and the OneCast continues to grow a culture of anglers helping anglers one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.